Okay, today for your viewing pleasure, we have kind of like a new category for you. I basically told you all ethical theories could be broken down into two major categories. We called this earlier teleological. And if you remember, teleological theories are interested in the consequences of an action or the end results of an action. Whereas deontological theories are more interested in doing what's right because it's right. So intention is much more important usually in these theories than the consequences of the actions. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And it's not just driven by results, it's also driven by other sorts of things. Okay? Like why, like things like duty, loyalty, honesty, honor, these sorts of qualities. But we have a kind of like a third category today, which is almost like a hybrid between the two, or maybe you'll see it as completely different. And this is called virtue ethics. And the formulator of virtue ethics is one of the big guns from the ancient world, and we have Aristotle. One of the big three of ancient Greece, the student of Plato, but he certainly set off on his own and made his own mark, even to this day, in the history of philosophy. And his ethic, I must say, is certainly one of the best. I mean, his reason is impeccable, and he is going to give us a theory that isn't just about duty, like the deontological people, or about consequences, like the consequentialists, but this is going to have to do with character, with training individuals how to make good decisions. In other words, ethics for Aristotle becomes, you could almost say, a habituation. Like practice makes perfect. And so it has a lot to do with the value of education. And this probably has something to do with some of the ancient Greek presuppositions. In many ways, you could simply say ignorance is evil, whereas knowledge is good. In fact, Aristotle would go so far to say that all evil or immoral actions are based out of ignorance. What do you guys think about that statement? He said if people really knew what they were doing, what it was going to do to themselves and to others, they wouldn't do those acts. But evil acts are done out of ignorance. What do you think about that? Yes?
What about ignorance is bliss?
I guess if you think evil is blissful, ignorance is bliss. I mean, that sounds nice. Maybe for the ignorant one, but not for all the people that have to live with them, and their neighbors, and the people driving next to them on the freeway. Yes?
What about, like, really smart people who are still evil? Like, they do bad things.
Like evil geniuses? Even though they appear very smart or very knowledgeable, Aristotle's retort would be that that knowledge is incomplete because if they really understood the outcome or what their actions were leading to, they wouldn't do it. And we could play this the rest of the morning, but it's really one of those non-falsifiable arguments, kind of like in egoism, everything's self-interest or selfishness. Because no matter what example you give me, I can just say, but if they really, really knew, they wouldn't have done it. But it's an interesting thing to think about. It's very different than a Judeo-Christian worldview, right, where all the time people are saying people act in full conscious awareness of their actions, and they do it anyways. But for a lot of the Greeks, it was, no, knowledge prevents these sorts of things. But there's very much part of that in our own society, and why there's such a priority or premium on education. I mean, at least when I grew up, education was supposed to be the solution to everything, to poverty. If we could just educate people and teach them how to manage their money, or how to get a job, or give them a trade, or we could end racism by educating people and teaching them that we're all the same under the skin, We could have world peace if we could just educate other people on how to play nicely in the sandbox of life. And so it's kind of this push for education, and the Greeks were very much into it as well, that we can educate people to be good. And so you can just kind of ruminate with that. Basically, Aristotle is saying good people, or people of good character, do good things. But that kind of sounds like what Jesus said too, right? A good tree bears good fruit, a corrupt tree bringeth forth corrupt fruit. And so Aristotle's key is, how do we make good trees, if trees are people? A little pruning, a little fertilizing, make sure they get the nutrients they need. And that would all come through like training, upbringing, and education. So environment is a huge factor for Aristotle. Bring people up in a way where they can know the good so that they'll reject the evil. And one of the benefits of this type of virtue ethics is what Aristotle is maintaining is you don't have to have a hedonic calculus like utilitarians trying to figure out what is going to produce the greatest pleasure in the end. And you don't have to worry about all these like hidden virtues and intentions and things like that, because a good person is going to have good intentions. And the consequentialists and deontological people, kind of like Kantians or utilitarians, they have real solid rules for how to behave and how to come to ethical decisions, right? Kant has his categorical imperative. The utilitarians have their greatest good principle or their utility principle, so you can use that to evaluate. Virtue ethics really doesn't have that, and that's a critique a lot of people have put on. It's just like, but virtue ethics doesn't tell you what to do. It's not like this is a right action, this is a wrong action. Yes?
If virtue ethics is all based off of the principle of good people doing good things, how do you define good in virtue ethics? How do they figure out?
Knowledge. Knowledgeable people
But
do good things.
Knowledge is the greatest good.
Happiness is the greatest good. That, in fact, that's the end of ethics. I believe the Greeks called it eudaimonia. Eudaimonia. And anyways, this idea of, it's not just happiness like a yuppie word happiness. It's happiness as in like bliss, contentment, well-being, a well-balanced life. Everything is in proportion. That's what we're talking about. We're not just talking about don't worry, be happy. We're talking about everything is as it should be. That's the end goal of Aristotle. And he says a good person making good choices and actions will live in that state. To show you how to achieve that well-proportioned life. In fact, in a lot of ways, you could say Aristotle applied the concept of the golden mean to ethics. And I'll talk about that in a minute, in case you don't know what that is. The other thing that goes with happiness is excellence. Or erte. Or arete. Excellence. It's almost like a Bill and Ted's ethic. Be excellent to one another. Be good to one another. Be excellent in all that you do. And I don't know, this kind of just gives me the tingles to think about it. If we could apply these sorts of aspects, like become knowledgeable, learn about yourself and others, about the world around you, and then in all that you do it in an excellent way. Can you imagine what an excellent world we would have? When I was a little boy,